That's a powerful statement. I'm going to choose to believe that they intended good, not evil, toward me.
Well, and that's what the Bible says love is. It hopeth all things, it beareth all things, it believeth all things.
Hey, Castleview, thank you for joining us once again today for the Castleview Baptist podcast. And I've got two of my favorite guys back again, Christian Lewis.
We were invited back.
You're invited back.
No gang signs today.
No gang signs. That's right. And Pastor Johnny's here as well. And really good to have you guys. Hey, listen, President Trump is back.
Come on. Roll Tide.
Did you watch the inauguration yesterday at all?
It was running in the house all day, so.
It was ours too.
I watched the speech. I didn't watch everything leading up to it, but I watched the speech.
You didn't watch the actual speech?
No.
What did you think
No,
about
I did watch. Yeah, I did.
Yeah, what'd you think?
I think Trump's amazing. He's such a good communicator.
Well, it's so funny because part of the time you think he's not a good communicator because of the simplicity in what he says.
He just repeats the same thing different ways.
That's right. But then at the same time you go, I love this. You know what I mean? There is something about some of the messages. I mean, I love what he said about genders, obviously. I mean, there were so many executive orders that he signed right off the bat that you're going, we need secure borders. I mean, we've got to change some of these things. But can you imagine? They just had tea together. You know. They just were in the room, and all of a sudden you've got Biden right behind you, former President Biden. Kamala Harris is right there. They've just had tea together, and then he basically just goes scorched earth.
I know.
Could you do that?
No, I don't. When we're that opposite, I feel like, and you're now in control, I don't know. That'd be hard. I do love what he said at the beginning. Like, it just was like, he started so strong. Yeah. The new golden age of America has begun.
Yes. I love it. Could you do something like that?
No.
I don't. I think to myself,
you got to be a little appreciative, at least of something they did, for 4 years.
Yes. I will say, I'm excited. Obviously, I voted for Donald Trump, and the reason I don't agree with everything that Trump would stand for. The three of us don't, and we're not saying that we have to agree with every single thing, but I do believe that he lines up most closely to the Bible. Life is such a big issue with our church, and listen, I've been a little disappointed with his stance on life here lately.
Sure.
His first term, he was much stronger on life than he is now. He's kind of backed off a little bit, and we as believers need to be praying about that and still pushing that and voting that direction for sure. But there's no question that he lines up in a more conservative manner. And so I'm excited about a lot of things that Lord willing we get to see. We need to make sure, as Timothy tells us, we've got to be praying right now for our president, whether you agree with him, disagree with him. This is an interesting time in the history of our country. And I can't wait to get to Mars. Did you see him say that?
No.
Yeah.
Did you see Elon Musk was back there, and he was pretty excited about. He wants to go to Mars.
Let's go
now, and he's got the right guy in the administration. He's got a guy that knows a little bit about. Have you seen Trump dance?
Yeah, his
little thing.
Yeah.
Did you see Elon dance?
No.
There may be one worse dancer in the world than Donald Trump, and it would be Elon Musk. Pretty interesting cabinet they've got right now for sure. But I'm hopeful. Well, Sunday, on a more serious note, we talked about our new sermon series, and we're going through Simplify, and we're going to be doing a number of topics. One's going to be about anxiety, and one's going to be about giving. There's a number of. We talked about relationships this past week. We don't want to go into 2025 carrying the same burdens, the same hurts. We can't advance into this next year and be successful believers if we're just holding on to the same things that we did last year. And one of the things we said in the message is it's impossible to carry peace, the peace of God, and hurt from people at the same time, right? You've got to let go of the hurt. And so that was the sermon this past Sunday. And the idea was we've got to lay down our hurt. And here's the truth of the matter. Every single one of us goes through hurt. Jesus does not say, hey, if you suffer persecution, it's when you suffer.
In this world, you will.
In this world, you will suffer. Have you guys ever gone through a hurt in your life?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, you go through them, and each one's different. Each one's different challenges. Each one's harder. Some are harder than others to get over. But yeah, you definitely go through.
And by the way, there are some differences, right? I mean, some of them are minor inconveniences. I mean, somebody hurt my feelings because they did this. Some of them are pretty major. You know, we had people in our service on Sunday that have gone through things that I've never endured. I mean, you talk about physical abuse, verbal abuse, mental abuse. I mean, there are some things that you could say, well, listen, let's be mature. We just need to get over that. And then there are some things you say, you know what, that's not something you're just going to get
to work through it
over.
Yeah.
Gotta work through it. Yeah. Can you share a time that you've been hurt that maybe the detail's not there or whatever? Can you think of something that's happened in your life that or maybe an illustration or example or maybe just a generality of some hurt you've gone through?
I think just some generality, I guess more so. You know, you work in ministry, you work with people. People have problems. You hear the phrase, you know, hurt people tend to hurt people. Mm-hmm. And so there is maybe not a tendency, but it does happen, I think, fairly frequently in ministry. And that's probably a place where you don't necessarily expect it unless you learn to, that when you're dealing with hurt people, that they can carry that hurt and, you know, lash out. Not even meaning maybe to affect you, but just that everything that they're dealing with, they just come across in a way.
That's a great point. Yeah. Hurting people hurt people. One of the things we talked about in Sunday's sermon was Jesus. Yes, he was treated unjustly, but there were some hidden motives, right? Mm-hmm. You had Caesar, who is believing that Christ is not paying taxes, and that's one of the things they talk about. Well, he wants to make an example of him. He doesn't want everyone stopping paying taxes, and here Jesus is a leader. You've got the religious leaders that they're hurting a little bit in that we're teaching a different religion than Jesus is teaching, and so therefore we don't want anyone to follow Jesus and his teaching. There's a lot of reasons that people might lash out at you. Sometimes you think it's all about us. Sometimes it's not about you at all. It's really about some person is hurting. Some person is going through some insecurity. Some person is facing some difficulty in life that you're not even the main character in that situation. Although we feel like we're the main character, we're just simply kind of a side part of their story because they're going through something.
You hit them at the wrong time. It could have been you or the guy at the gas station. It didn't matter who. They were going to lash out, and it just happened to be you in that moment because they were overwhelmed with something or a situation.
Yes.
Sometimes it's not you at all.
You were in the wrong place at the wrong time. And so I think it's important to understand that. We talked about that with Jesus this past week. There were people that had hidden motives for him. There's a reason that we all get bitter, right? Primarily two reasons we get bitter. One is because we've been done wrong. And I think we would all, if I were to say, hey, raise your hand if you've been done wrong, you too would raise your hands. I would raise your hand. I think every person listening right now would say, yeah, absolutely, I have been done wrong. But there is a second reason that we've often go through bitterness, and that is because we think that we've been done wrong. Mm-hmm. I don't know that I can think of anything right off the top of my head that's happened to me that I just thought I was done wrong. I can think of some times that I've dealt with someone that was upset with me, that I had an answer in my mind that, no, you just thought that you were done wrong because that was not my motive. That was not how I felt in that moment. You just thought that you were done wrong. That happens quite a bit in our lives too, right? Because here's one thing I've learned in life. Every one of us, every person has a perspective. Mm-hmm. Whenever there's conflict, it's because there's two people, and with those two people, one saw it this way, and another saw it this way.
Yeah. Well, and to something you say often is, we judge others by their actions. We judge ourselves by what we intended, right?
Yeah, our motives.
Our motives, our intentions, and sometimes we take maybe their intentions and we don't know what they were intending. And sometimes that's almost harder.
Yeah.
It's easier to read into it.
You read into it. Yeah.
Create things.
Yeah. I've had several situations that I've actually gone over to somebody and I was going to straighten them out. Like this is cut and dry. This is obvious. You are so wrong in this situation, and I got you dead to rights, and I'm going to sit down and straighten you out. And after hearing why they responded the way they did, and what they used to read into that, whether I agreed with them or not, at the very least, I was able to say, okay, I felt like I was going to sit down and go, ABC, there's no denying it. This is all on you. And actually walking away from that conversation, I went, you know what? I could see why they thought that. I could see why they said that.
Yeah, I think you have to I can kind of do this to a fault because sometimes things are more black and white, but obviously there are situations where you just need to choose to see the best in people. Where I don't really know what they meant by that.
Yeah.
I don't know what they're going through, but I'm going to just for my sanity, I'm going to cut the thoughts before they get angry towards that person.
Yes.
And I'm just going to choose to believe they didn't mean. And oftentimes that usually nips the emotion pretty quickly, where you just quit thinking about it and, okay, it's fine. I forgive them.
That's a powerful statement. I'm going to choose to believe that they intended good, not evil toward me.
Well, and that's what the Bible says love is. It hopeth all things, it beareth all things, it believeth all things. It sees the best in people.
Yeah.
Almost when you read that to a fault, almost not to naivety, but just
I almost used 1 Corinthians 13 as my text for Sunday, and then I had too much, and I ended up just going with, and that was the passage I was going to actually stop on. And here's a statement that I think highlights very well what you just said. Carnal people not walking in the Spirit, people walking in the flesh, carnal people have a tendency to make small problems big.
Yes.
But spiritual people take big problems and they make them small. And I think that's probably the first way we do that is, you know what? Let me give this person the benefit of the doubt. I know they said this thing, but they might have been hurting. They may not have meant it. By the way, have we ever said something to somebody I laugh about this with our life group sometimes. When you talk as much as I talk, and I'm an extrovert, I don't like silence. And so if we're sitting in silence, I'm going to say something. When you say as many words in a day as I say, you're going to say some foolish words, right? I mean, some of those words are kind of stupid. And I can't tell you how many Sundays I go to bed at night, Sunday nights, and I start, that was a great day. Oh, man, this was good. Why did I say that? Yeah. Hey, I wonder if they knew I was kidding. By the way, I'm an extrovert, but I'm also sarcastic.
Yeah.
And
dangerous.
That's a dangerous combination. So I wonder if they knew I was kidding.
Yeah.
Or I start replaying, I said that thing. I laughed. A few others laughed. The person I was talking to didn't laugh. You know what I mean? And so I think that because we all say foolish things, I would go to bed at night and go, I didn't mean that. I really didn't intend them to be hurt. But I know that people can be hurt especially if they don't assume good intentions.
Sure. And I think you have to be careful with, you see this with teenagers a lot. Some teenagers are sarcastic. Some people can take a joke. They can take, and some people, they absolutely cannot. And so the answer is not to keep poking at them and getting them angry. I found that with teenagers. Some of them just don't respond well to that. Even if you are a sarcastic person, maybe find a different route to kind of
It's funny you say that because, this is who I am. This is how I am.
Right. But you're offending them. Like
you're
left
offending
and right.
them, yes. Okay, so peeling back the curtain a little bit, my wife Debbie, she doesn't love sarcasm. It's not her. It's not her love language, right? I mean, to me, ribbing and needling and joking is fun. I do that with you guys, and we can rib and needle, and I can hurt my wife's feelings with it, though. Like she'll take what I said as truth, and I'm like, no, I'm just kidding. It was just kind of a funny. Well, at some point, maturity says, I need to knock it off. You know, I need to stop. It's not working with her. You've got teenagers that you can be sarcastic with, but this is true too. You have some teenagers that they will take it too far. You've got some teenagers that might even stop being as respectful to you as they should be because you're throwing it out there and now the lines have been blurred a little bit.
Well, and your only conversation becomes sarcasm, which is dangerous. When your only line of communication is sarcasm, it becomes you're not getting deep. It's useless conversation.
That's a great you're communicating, but it's in ribbing and needles and you're never able to sit down and get authentic. Hey, so and so. How was your week with God? How was your walk with God? How was your devotions this week?
And at some point, even if you are kidding, it becomes almost like a sin because it's this vain communication. It's useless. It's not getting to a point. Even if you are just kidding, you're not getting anywhere.
It's worthless. Yeah, it's not advancing the cause that you have for these kids. There are some people obviously that respond the same way you do. Wonderful. You know, I've got some guys in our church that I know that if I've got to say something sarcastic about, these are the guys that I can use, and they'll not only be fine with it, they'll enjoy it. You know, they kind of like it. You know that we're remembering. You guys give me and Bill a hard time. You know, sometimes about we mopped one night, right, and the whole night we are just ripping each other the entire night.
The room.
Yeah, right. I know. And at some point, I remember you saying, "Wow, I thought you guys loved each other," you know, kind of thing. And on the way out though, we give each other a big hug, but you know what? We do have very close conversations too. I mean, we had tears this last week. You know, we've got that balance, but you do have to know who can handle that and who can't handle that. So everyone's got a perspective is one lesson. Here's another lesson. The Bible says in Matthew chapter 5 and verse 9, blessed are the peacemakers. I think that's very interesting how that word is used there, Johnny. Peacemakers. In other words, sometimes peace is not there, but you've got to be the one to go in and make peace.
For sure. I mean, my mom used to say something a lot, you know, if you have no rights, you can't get offended. And I think part of the peacemaking is setting your rights aside. Yeah. And it is kind of taking that humble pill because you may never have done anything, but you know, in their eyes, they think you have. And so, you know, it's like, I'm willing to accept the blame, you know, to move forward. And I think that's a valuable lesson to learn, you know, to be willing to kind of set yourself down, allowing that relationship to go forward. I think it's hard to make peace when two people are struggling with pride.
Yes. That was a great statement. Say that statement again that your mom said.
If you have no rights, you can't get offended.
Yeah. I don't remember who said this, but I heard it years ago, and it's the same idea. And basically talked about I'm supposed to be crucified. I've mortified the flesh. You can't hurt a dead man. You know, was the idea. Same idea. I think that is, some of us live with the last straw in our front pocket. You know what I mean? Oh, it's right here. I'm always. Oh, you said that? That's the last. It's right here. You know, I'm ready to throw this last straw down right now. And some of us need to calm down a little bit and begin to say, okay, I don't know how that was intended toward me, but hey, Joseph, I mean, it was intended very negatively toward him. They can't have peace with him. They sell him off into the slave. He's rejected. He's forgotten. He looks at his brothers and says, hey, you meant evil, but God meant it for good. Guys, it's okay. I'm not going to sell you guys off. I'm not going to have you killed. I'm going to choose to forgive.
I've actually been reading through Joseph in my devotions. Yesterday I sat down and was reading through that, wrote about him some. It is interesting. You see the two different perspectives there because Joseph is a very forgiving. God's always on his life. Everything he touches is just like, you know, it almost turns to gold because God's with him, the Bible says. And but you see the opposite with his brothers. You know, when you read the story of Joseph, he's sharing these pretty bold dreams. Like, bro, knock it off.
I know.
Like,
so I don't know that we preach the discernment of Joseph.
Yeah, yeah, he didn't have a lot of discernment.
Because he may not have should have shared some of those
Yeah,
things.
but his brothers just couldn't get over it. And even his own father was like, "Why are you?" After the second dream, he's like, "Stop! Like,
yeah, knock it off.
Why are you trying to say this?" And so, but there wasn't a lot of forgiveness there, which allowed bitterness to creep in, which made them do crazy stuff,
crazy things.
Yeah.
I do love it though. Isn't that like brothers? You know,
Yeah.
Hey, had a dream
what
last
a stupid
night.
dream to share with you. I'm gonna rule over you.
Right. And hey, Joseph, read the room. You know, these guys are mad enough they're about to throw you into a pit.
And then the second time, I had another one.
He just doesn't get it. Yes. But he goes to them at the very end of it though and says, listen, God meant it for good. In other words, he's able to see what God is doing.
Yeah.
Even in negative circumstances. I think that can help take the edge off of hurt sometimes too.
Yeah.
That there's a lesson. God was moving in the midst. Listen, you might have done something wrong to me, but God taught me through it. God helped me through it. I'm going to be a peacemaker because I feel like it's important. Another verse I think is really important in the lesson. The Bible talks about forbearing one another in love. And you just said 1 Corinthians 13, that love believeth all things, hopeth all things, and endureth all things. Here's another thing. When you forbear something, a peacemaker says, okay, this person did do me harm, but I'm going to choose to overlook it. You know, we can do that. That is... Sometimes that word forbearance, Debbie has a lesson that she'll take out makeup in front of ladies and she'll take the concealer. And the concealer is usually for us, right? We conceal, a woman would conceal maybe a pimple or some kind of blemish on their face so that people can't see it. The concealer of forbearance is not for yourself, though. It really is for somebody else. Okay, there is a blemish here. I'm not going to expose it. I'm not going to highlight it. I'm not going to tell everyone about it. Hey, come here for a minute. I'm gonna actively
I'll go to that person and conversate about it.
I can conversate about it.
Yeah.
But you know what? Even though you did me wrong, I'm going to choose to forbear. Okay, you just said something that I want to follow up on. When should we go to a person and confront them about it? And when can we just let that go? Because sometimes that's kind of a, you know, I've had people come to me over some pretty dumb stuff over the years. And I've had some people over the years that I've offended and I've hurt them deeply that should have come to me way before and they never did. And I heard about it later. And I wish they would have come to me because we could have come to a good place. Johnny, how do you say I need to talk to this person, or I can just be a peacemaker, I can forbear, I can let it go? Can leave it with God.
If I had offended somebody and I was talking to them as, hey, when do I want you to approach me? I would probably tell them, hey, whenever something happens that you can't just let go, like it's not just going to roll off, come talk to me about it. Because I don't want you holding on to it. Because you holding on to your hurt is going to be that seed to bitterness.
That's it.
And then you talk about James, that bitterness is the beginning of all these other evils.
Yes.
And, next thing you know, there's this landslide of, holding on to the hurt is just hurting yourself.
Yeah.
So, come talk to me about it. Now, to answer your question, when do I practice forbearance? When do I practice forbearance versus, when am I going to go talk to someone? I think the answer might stay the same. I think I might need to evaluate and really, I'll play devil's advocate with myself, and I think I can put myself in someone else's shoes a little bit better than,
Why are you looking at me?
I don't know. I think it'd be easier for me to just sit there and say, I don't think they meant this. I think I could see, a reason for this. Whereas if it came down to, hey, no, they meant it out to get me, let's talk about it.
Could you, in that case, still, hey, they meant they were out to get me, could you still not talk about it to that person?
I think if I was willing to forgive them, potentially. I think if I want that relationship to move forward, I think there needs to be a conversation. I think without the conversation, even if I've been willing to forgive them,
there's no restoration.
Well, and you're never truly seeing them as a soul either. There's emotions tied to all this, and you're never truly able to see them the way I think Christ sees them when you keep that emotion tied to a certain relationship.
Explain that.
Way. Well, I mean, if I'm never really letting go of the emotion of what happened by working through it and seeing both sides and things like that, then every time I see that person, that emotion almost unintentionally is going to keep being there, and you'll kind of have a physical view of that person instead of a spiritual view and seeing them like Christ sees them. And forgiving.
Being a peacemaker in that case would be taking the initiative to go and talk to that person. Right. It would be. For whatever reason, I can't. In my spirit, I'm having a hard time letting this go. By the way, it can be helpful if you confront someone in the right way. It can be helpful for that person that you're confronting. Right? I want to know, oh, wow, I'm doing this thing to you. I also do this thing to somebody else. And the Holy Spirit can use that to begin to change me. But I think that there are a lot of minor offenses that we could release somebody from, that we don't have to, for me to go to you, in a couple months, hey, Johnny, you said that thing. You really made me mad. It really hurt. And then it's, for me just to do that for my own benefit is no good unless there truly is something that, what, Lord, my heart, I'm having a hard time getting over this. I feel like for me to be able to have the relationship with Johnny that I want to have, we need to have this conversation. And in that moment, I'm going not to correct you or to make you feel bad. I'm going because I want to restore that relationship.
Yeah, you want to restore, and then what you find at the end of that is you're probably closer than you even were before.
That's right.
Because you've worked through things, and you both have this loyalty as far as, hey, we know we can work through things together. We already have, and I care enough about this friendship and this relationship to work through things together.
Yeah, and I think that's part of Christian fellowship is we are going to disappoint each other, but we're going to love each other enough that we're going to work through it together. And sometimes I'm just going to have to overlook some things in your life, and sometimes I'm going to have to confront you on some things, but I'm committed, as Paul talked about this body, I'm committed to the body. I'm not just going to write you off, and you'll sit over there and I'll sit over here. I'm committed to making peace with you, and I want to live peaceably with all men as much as lieth within me, but whatever that takes, and it may take a conversation. So if we hold on to hurt, and part of the reason we talked about this on Sunday was we've got to lay aside this hurt, because you mentioned a minute ago, Johnny, if you don't lay aside the hurt, there are some consequences that start attaching themselves to you. I wrote James down. You mentioned James just a moment ago. Can you guys think of any consequences of okay, I've held on to this hurt long enough, too long, and I've even nurtured this hurt a little bit, and now it's not just hurt, now it's becoming bitterness. What are some consequences to that?
I mean, according to James, it could be anything.
Yeah,
it could be anything. It says anything and everything. If I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
Every evil work, is following bitterness.
Yeah.
And so I think bitterness really ought to be something that we are maybe more sort of scared of.
Yeah.
Hurt could be okay for a time, but if it's never handled,
yes,
it's going to develop into bitterness. I don't know of any circumstances where, hey, I'm holding on to this hurt, but I'm not blaming you for it.
Yeah. Okay, well, that's a great statement. I agree with you, but how would you, hurt is okay for a certain amount of time?
I think when hurt changes from, okay, I've been hurt to now I'm blaming you for it.
Yeah.
That's when the bitterness has taken root.
That's good.
And then it's just going to continue
Which
to grow.
Then creates thoughts like, I want to hurt you now. Like that's where the dangerous thoughts start coming in.
There's a little peer into Pastor Christian's heart. I want to hurt you. I will hurt you. That's a great, okay, so hurt, there's a wound, and I'm wounded, and that's natural. We all have emotions, and we all have hurt. We go through that. But the moment that hurt becomes, it moves from, I've been wounded to now I want to wound you. Well, there you know now you have moved into the bitterness stage of life.
I would take it even further to the sense of just not even wishing positive things for that individual.
Sure.
Because I think you could sit back and say, you know what, I don't want to do you harm.
Yeah.
But I'm gonna smirk when things don't go when
Yes,
something doesn't go your way.
yes.
I'm just like, you know what, this is God, exacting
Good job,
his justice.
Lord.
Which
You
the
got 'em.
danger, but the danger in that, you're right, because you do need to take it a step further because God sees that.
Yep.
And he says, hey,
Yep.
you
Yep.
live that way, I'll do it to you.
Yep.
You know?
And Proverbs says, and I'm trying to think of the verse because the three of us have talked about it, but Proverbs says something about don't rejoice when your enemy stumbleth, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And we've talked about that because I've had moments in my ministry that, hey, there you go. You know what I mean? Hey, guys, did you notice that?
Yeah.
This person that was attacking us or against us, they stumbled. And God says, whoa. Don't get in that place. That's a very dangerous place for you to be, is actually getting to the place that you want them to. Okay, so you just said it. Not even where my hurt becomes where I want to hurt them or hate them, but even if it's I can't be kind to that person. And we talked about this passage on Sunday. Love your enemies. Bless those that curse you. Pray for those that despitefully use you. Okay, that does not leave itself open for passivity. You cannot be passive, right? That is a radical grace that God is calling us to. By the way, that's the radical grace that Christ gives to us, right? While we were yet sinners, Christ died for us, right? There was I did you wrong, but you gave me good.
Yeah.
It would do us good to remember that.
I think when you're talking about bitterness and maybe the evaluation process of your own life, it's, can I rejoice with them when things are going their way? And can I pray for them when things aren't? If you can't pray a blessing for someone,
that's a
Lord,
great litmus test.
Can I, Lord, can you help them through this?
Yes.
Versus, maybe the Jonah mentality, I'm going to sit up here and watch it burn.
Yeah.
No, if you're going to rejoice with them when things are going their way and you're going to pray for them when they're not,
Yes.
I think really determines where your heart is. Because I think it's easy to say, no, I'm not bitter.
Yes.
But, behind the scenes,
But
it's
I
like,
can't.
okay.
Yeah, right. Okay, so we talked about that in the sermon Sunday, didn't we? Jesus, you can tell a lot about a person by how they pray when no one can hear them.
Yeah.
You can tell how you feel about a person about your prayers, right? And Jesus showed us his heart toward us when he was on that cross. You had the malefactors around him. You had all the Roman guards that had just plucked his beard, that had put a mocking sign above his head, who had whipped him with the cat of nine tails. They had spit in his face. They had plucked his beard. They're crucifying him. And in that moment, Jesus says, Father, he prays, forgive them. And by the way, that doesn't mean that they had this blank pardon, right? I'm going to see all of these Roman guards in heaven one day. And no, he's saying, permit them, let them. If they will repent of their sin, if they'll turn to you, then allow them to. So what you just said is pretty powerful. If you can't pray for somebody, you probably have not released that hurt, that anger, that bitterness to the Lord. Christian, you have anything you want to say about that?
I mean, that's hard. That's a hard one because, you do want the truth to win at the end of the day too. And sometimes, I don't know, I can get convicted even in that. Like, is that the right prayer? And maybe you guys can't. Is that the right prayer to even pray? Because sometimes my approach can be, God, I pray the truth wins in this situation. But to me, the more I think about what we're talking about, that's almost not releasing them either. I don't know. I could be, I don't know.
Yeah.
That's where my mind's going right now.
Sure.
You talk about truth winning. Can the truth win if there's never been a conversation? So I think if you sit back and you are, God, allow the truth to be seen, but I'm not willing to have that conversation with them.
Can't you release a person without praying imprecatory prayers, or can you release a person without being angry, or can you release a person and still desire God to handle a wickedness?
Yeah, because when you're praying for truth, it's not necessarily praying evil on that person. It's just, hey, a lot of people are seeing a lot of different sides here. I do want the truth to be known,
right?
And the Bible does say that the truth will prevail. I mean, there is the truth is gonna be what sustains you through things. But I don't know. Sometimes I think you can have a heart even in that. That's like,
you can forgive somebody without agreeing with their actions.
Sure.
Jesus on the cross Stephen is being killed, right? I mean, he's being stoned, and he says, laying out this into their charge. I mean, he's praying the best for these people in a moment that a great wickedness is taking place. Mm-hmm. You cannot agree with something and yet release that thing to God, sure. Right?
I think if you release it to God, though, you have to release whatever's going to be revealed, or whatever's going to be accomplished.
Correct.
So, like you talked about Jonah, you know, he may have released it to God, but still had an expectation that there would be a consequence.
Vengeance is mine; I'll repay, saith the Lord. God, when I release this person, what I'm saying when I release them is, you do whatever you want to do. Okay, if you want to reward this person, ooh, that's going to be really hard for me to watch.
Right.
but I'm releasing them.
Yeah.
If you want to punish this person, Lord, help me not to get excited about that, and help me have the right spirit about that. Let me not rejoice when my enemy stumbleth. But Lord, whatever you want to do, you are the judge in this situation.
I think if you're releasing it, you can't sit back with an expectation because you've released it.
Yes.
To sit there and have an expectation, I think you're still holding on to
expectations. That's a good point.
Okay, the expectation is what's going to lead to bitterness, though, right? I have okay, Lord, I'm going to forgive them, but you better get them.
My judge, right.
You're the judge. You go handle that. I don't want them to prosper. I don't want them. Well, the psalmist in 73, God, I don't understand it. Why are they all prospering? Hey, God's going to make all things right. And by the way, I'm thankful for the mercy of God, because I needed every day we're always the offended, right? We're always the one that we always see ourselves primarily as the one sinned against. Mm-hmm. I need to start seeing myself primarily as the sinner.
Yeah.
God, I've offended you, and I've offended a lot of other people too. I'm thankful for the mercy of God in my life. So before I'm too fast to, God, I'm mad you didn't do, I probably ought to stop and say, God, thank you for not judging me or giving me what I deserve in that situation. Two big things about holding on to bitterness that James is talking about. Confusion's the first one. He says that when you have bitter, envying, and strife, confusion is always the first consequence of it. That is simply just, you're going to have a hard time discerning the will of God. You're going to have this spiritual haze. You don't know what to do. You don't know where to go. But the bigger one that you mentioned a minute ago, the Bible says in that James 3:16 passage that person that harbors bitterness, every evil work is going to follow. And I think one thing we want to understand about hurt, when we don't lay it aside, it's not hurting the person out there that hurt you.
No.
Ultimately, it's hurting you.
No, I ran across this quote yesterday in some reading, and it's by Jordan Dooley. It says, "Forgiveness isn't an unfair gift we have to give the person who hurts us. It's not something unfair that God gives us to the person that hurts us. Forgiveness is actually God's greatest mercy for the hurting human heart to be able to heal." It's actually a gift that God gives us to be able to heal. It's not something that's unfair that we have to give to someone else. He actually gives it to us to be able to heal our heart. And when we live in bitterness, we aren't healing. We aren't living in a place we're not receiving the gift. Forgiveness is there so that we can heal. And when we live in a space of bitterness, there's not healing, and we're not receiving the gift that God has given us. I think when you view it in that way, it's pretty powerful.
Yeah.
That this is something God's given me to free me.
Yeah.
To free me, not
Yeah.
necessarily just to let them get by with it. It's to free me.
Yeah. Somebody said, bitterness is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die.
Yeah.
It does begin to destroy your own spirit,
Yeah.
and you start to rot from the inside out.
Well, you look at, I mean, my mom and my sister, they watch murder shows. I can't do it. I'm just like, oh my goodness. But when you're just sitting there and you hear the leading up to all these things, of all these like crazy things that happen, it started with somebody hurt me and I can't get over it. And then all these crazy crimes start to happen because they never got it settled in their own heart, or forgiving that person for something that was so stupid. I mean, we think of road rage as a big one, right?
Yeah,
and road rage is one of those that
right.
You see guys go crazy and wreck other people's cars and maybe even like really injure somebody because of something stupid.
And if you start looking at the root of, you'll start to see some commonalities in yourself. Why? What gets me the most?
Yeah.
Is it? I think I gave that story, that illustration Sunday of me in the parking lot, and I've noticed about me that I'm triggered. That's the word, I guess, the only word I can think of.
Yeah.
I'm triggered when somebody assumes the worst of me when I did not intend the worst, right? I mean, it triggered.
You didn't intend anything.
I didn't intend anything. I'm driving around. It was their fault, you know. And you're trying to, and you know what? At the end of the day, what I identify that is, it's pride.
Pride.
It's pride.
Only by pride cometh contention.
It's pride in me that, wait a minute, it wasn't me that was at fault. It was you that are at fault. You're the one that, and I got to let you know that. You have to know right now that it wasn't me. And I think that we do ourselves well when we start to identify what is it that gets us, you know what I mean? Because all of us have our areas. Mine, I'm ashamed to say that. I'm ashamed to admit that. But because I feel like,
you're just cars in general. If he's riding with me, he's sitting there holding on to the
that's fear. That's fear that you're seeing in me.
And I'm a good driver.
No, I'm ashamed to even admit that pride is such an issue. But that's what that is, right? I mean, that's what's coming out of me when somebody assumes something of me that I never intended, and that reveals something in my heart that I've got to, Lord, I'm too big. In my own mind, I'm not. In my mind, I'm bigger than I should be.
Yeah.
So I think one of the keys to this whole laying down our hurt is beginning to identify some areas in our lives that, okay, this consistently triggers me. God, I need you to do a work in my heart on this. And maybe the best way to do that is to walk in the Spirit, right? Because we're hearing messages from the culture, we're hearing messages from the evil one, we're hearing messages from our flesh. God, what do you say about? Well, Isaiah says, I saw God high, holy, lifted up. When I saw God high, holy, lifted up, I saw myself. Yeah. I was undone. I was low. And I need to see myself the way that God sees me.
Even in our responses and lack of forgiveness and bitterness, the Bible says there's pleasure in sin for a season. That's where it gets real tricky, and I think James talks about confusion in the mind, because there is a pleasure in it as far as I'm going to get back at them, or I want to wish evil upon them. There is this sense of, you want justice to be served and things like that. But then at the end of all that is just, you're miserable. Like, why was I thinking in that way?
Yeah.
The relationship can't be restored, or, is never going to be the same because of how, not because of even what they did, how I responded to what they did.
Yeah.
Now there is just this huge.
Wouldn't it be great if we became people that were unoffendable?
Oh, yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, and the Bible says, great peace have they which love thy law, and nothing shall offend them.
Yeah.
Like, okay, Lord, I love you and your word more than I love me. So your mom's quote a minute ago, what can someone do to a dead person? I've laid down my rights, whatever that quote was. Why not get to it? We need to walk in the Spirit enough that we need to be content enough with God's view and estimation of ourselves that we're not so worried about somebody else.
What was Christ's view of, what was his? Christ would constantly put people before himself. And I think in order to, subjugate ourselves to having no rights, we have to have the same love Christ did and to have a higher love for others than we do for ourselves. We're not going to be able to put others first.
Yeah.
If you take the parking lot situation, to back up, or hey, you go by all means.
Yeah.
To give even a simple
first.
act of love to put others before ourselves, to have a higher. higher view is the wrong way to say that, but to choose to love people more than we're gonna love ourselves and take care of ourselves. Sure, things are gonna happen. Things are gonna not always go according to plan, but
which is so interesting because like in your mind, that doesn't feel good in the moment.
No.
Like to love someone doesn't feel good in the moment, but in the long term feels so great. It feels good to get back at them, but in the long term feels so bad. It's funny how the mind.
The honor preferring one another. I think if that's what you live by, and you just constantly chose to prefer someone else over yourself, you'd find yourself, you're setting your right. You're in a sense, you're setting your rights aside. You're putting aside what you want for the preference of somebody else. And if that's what you live by, when do you get offended?
Yeah, that's great. That's really good. Let's wrap up with this. So one more thing, and that is this. I think a lot of times people get hurt because of what's been said. Gossip is something that just destroys churches. Relationships are severed, and just saying something, maybe not even intentionally hurtful, but maybe something that was kind of loose. If I was really thinking, I wouldn't have said that. I shouldn't have said it in that way. And it becomes hurtful. Okay, how do you stop gossip in a church? What are some principles about what you would say or how you would respond if somebody comes and talks to you with some little juicy tidbit? Do you have any ideas about maybe how to stop gossip? Somebody comes to you and says, "Hey, Johnny, let me tell you something about Christian. You're gonna get something out of this. You're not gonna believe what he did." What's the response there?
I think when it comes to gossip, my two points of advice would be in that situation, incorporating the person that's being talked about. I think eliminates gossip. So if you are somebody that hey, you have all the tidbits on everybody else, you're just you're allowing gossip to take place.
Yeah.
I think if you're someone who struggles with gossip, the thought process of would I still be saying this if they were standing right there? What I think I fall prey to the most when it comes to gossip is saying something maybe humorous or what I find humorous about somebody. You're just kind of joking about it, and then like how many times like I'll be saying something and then like I watch them walk by in the corner of my eye and I'm just like,
I hope they didn't hear that.
You're right.
Yeah.
And in that sense, would I say this if they're standing right there?
Yeah.
And if you're going to say that, oh yeah, I would. Well, have you talked to them about it?
Right.
I think there needs to be some level of evaluation for the individual who struggles with gossip. Is this a conversation that I've already had with them?
Yes.
And even then, I think
even then it does not like it has to be shared. But my goodness, if you're not willing to talk to that person, there's no business you have talking to somebody else about it. And I think that's one of the principles. I mean, is this something that would be kind? And it may be true, but it might be honest. But is it kind? Is it inspiring? Is it helpful? Is it encouraging?
Right.
Would I want someone else to say the same thing I'm saying about this person? Would I want them saying this about me? Whether it were true or not, would I want to hear this?
I think being a harbor for gossip is just as dangerous as being the one who's gossiping. When you're this safe harbor where all these ships park, you're in a dangerous spot.
You have to start asking yourself, why is everybody talking to me?
Yeah.
I think a lot of people, people just love me. People love to share. I just have that. I'm just friendly. No, you are a stinking safe harbor for gossip.
My dad always used to say this, and you can bank on it, and you see it come true. When they're talking to you about others, they're talking about you too. That's who they are. That's
what they do.
And so you're not in safety at all. Actually, you're in a very dangerous spot. But you said like how to get rid of gossip in the church. I think one of the biggest things is when you hear something about someone else from someone else, number one, is this their general character?
Yeah.
Is kind of what we go to. Is this their general character? You know what? That doesn't sound like Pastor Johnny. It doesn't sound like Pastor Throndson. So let's go to them and try
Yeah.
to get this thing
Yeah.
resolved. Obviously, you have some beef with them. I don't want to be in the middle of this.
Right.
Well, two things are going to happen. Either they're going to go get it resolved, or they know he's not safe anymore.
Yep.
He's not a safe
He's not
place.
safe.
He's not
So
safe.
I think, okay, we're all in the worship center, and you're in one corner, and they're telling you about it, and I'm in the other corner. Hey, Pastor Chris, you know Pastor Throndson, you know what he's doing over there? And I think that's the exact answer right there. Hey, you know what? That doesn't sound like him. I bet there was a miscommunication. Hey, come on, let's go talk to him right now, and just start walking. Let's go talk to him right now. And you know what's going to happen? They're going to be like, David Gibbs tells a story about getting in a car with a pastor, and the pastor saying to him, wow, did you hear about this pastor? Did you hear about this? Here's all these things the pastor's doing. And David Gibbs he said in that moment, that does not sound like so-and-so. I've got his number. And he starts dialing. And the pastor immediately says, oh, I don't even know if it's true. So, I mean, don't call him. I don't know.
Right.
Well, that's the point, right? You said it, at least at that moment, you are no longer safe harbor. You're not safe to that person because now they're going, well, if I say something, they're going to take me right to that person. And what's that going to do? It ends people coming to you.
Well, and you're going to be miserable too. I remember talking to a teenager at our old church, and they were this safe place for all these people to come to with all their problems, their sins, with all this, stuff. They would come to them with all the junk, and it got miserable for them. They were like, man, I just feel like, there's some things that parents probably need to know. There's some things that this person needs to know, all this stuff, but I don't feel, safe. It just became overwhelming when they became that safe harbor. At first you feel good, right? It's like, but then when you become that for people, it can become draining.
Yeah.
Because then you don't feel comfortable around anybody.
That's right. That's a good practice. So let me tie this up with this thought. We've had times over the years, we've been pastoring the church here for 16 years. You don't have to be pastoring a church to be hurt. You can be just breathing and you're going to be hurt. We've had some decisions over the years we've had to make. Okay, they're saying this, it's not true. There have been some times that we've chosen to forbear and not have a conversation with that person. And sometimes the difference we came down to was, okay, are they just saying this about us? And am I going to this person out of pride just to stop them from talking about me? Mm-hmm. In other words, is this about my name? Or is this hurting the cause of Christ?
Yes.
Is this about his name? Yeah. And if it's about if you look at Paul in the New Testament, you will find he's being slandered in prison and they're preaching and they're saying things about him. And he's like, hey, as long as the gospel goes out, I don't care if Christ's name be preached, I'm good. But you talk about Jesus to Paul in a negative way, and you talk about somebody that is going to go all apostle on you, right? I mean, he was very serious about, no, you're not gonna. You talk about Christ, I'm gonna settle that. I'm gonna make sure you see the truth about who Jesus is. And I think sometimes if our heart can at least determine what this is all about, is this, in my case, pride? Is this about pride right now? Because if this is just a proud moment in my life that I gotta clear my name, well, maybe I don't need to clear my name. Maybe I do need to have a conversation, have good restoration, but maybe I don't. Maybe I can actually, you know what, Lord, this is about me. It's not about you. It's not that important. I can overlook it. I can be a peacemaker here in this situation. Guys, thank you for sitting down for a couple of minutes and having this conversation. I would encourage people after the sermon on Sunday and after this conversation and their own personal study, going into 2025, to search their hearts and just, is there something? I don't want to drag the baggage from 2024 into 2025. I need to simplify my life. I need to let go of some things that I've been carrying around in church, if that's true in your life. I know sometimes it's true in mine. So this is not the three of us sitting telling you you're wrong. Honestly, every one of us goes through these moments in life that we're hurt, we're mistreated, we're misunderstood, maybe we're betrayed, and we need to come to a place in our life that we handle this the right way. And listen, you might be in a situation where you say, well, listen, this wasn't just a little word. This was very serious. And there may be some very serious steps that need to be involved, and you may need to get counsel. I want you to know that we're here for you. If you need anything, call us. My cell is 720-878-8872. Call me. Call the church office. Talk to these guys. If you have something you need to talk through with us, we're here to help and here to encourage you in your walk with the Lord Jesus Christ. Hey, thanks for joining us again for this podcast episode. We will see you next week.